participants? So I know you can't respond because you're all on mute. These are some of the challenges in technology actually, because we are not face to face. Now we are doing it in virtual meeting. So I welcome you all to this webinar and thank Mellissa Ferrier for really accepting and agreeing to address all of you on this very important topic of role of L&D in creating an integrated talent strategy. So L&D plays a very vital role in actually driving the talent strategy in an organization, and there's no one better than Mellissa, according to me, who can actually take us through what are the nuances involved in creating a right L&D strategy. So just an introduction about Mellissa. Mellissa Ferrier, a talent strategist, Australian. You can make out actually, maybe once, but she's from Australia. And she made India her home for the last 7 years. And how I came to know Mellissa was we worked together 7 years ago in a company called Vestas, where she was actually driving a lot of talent strategy in the organization, leading the leadership development program for the senior managers in the company in association with the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. So in fact, she was also the inspiration for me to get certified as a coach and also go and do a certification program in Hogan in Kuala Lumpur. And I must admit that I've learned a lot of things from Mellissa. So a bit about Melissa's background. She is a postgraduate in occupational and organizational psychology from London Metropolitan University. And she did a bachelor's degree in psychology from Australian Catholic University in Melbourne. And once she moved to London, she went through a short stint with Thomson Dunn, which is a management consulting firm in London. So she worked there before she's moved to India in the year 2009. That was actually 11 years ago. And she was initially associated with the DDI, the Development Dimensions International. Most of you must be knowing. She was also associated with Vestas, where I was working. And she was associated with Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola also, she did some coaching and also some leadership development before she moved to YSC. And she moved into her current organization in the year, I think 6 years ago. And currently she is the HR head for one of the business verticals, as you must have seen from the invite you had. And in fact, prior to this role in Wipro, she was actually leading the Global 100 Leadership Program there. You know, Wipro is an international organization, and they had these high potentials sitting across most of the countries where Wipro was operating. And Mellissa was responsible for actually leading the Global 100 Leadership Program there. So I think she is certified in a whole lot of HR and psychology tools, to name a few: Hogan, Belbin, and she's an executive coach. She's published several articles. If you go through her LinkedIn profile, you can read a whole lot of the work she has done there. And I would say that we are very happy to have Mellissa today, this morning, as the first series of the guest lectures for the ISTD diploma students. I will leave the platform to Mellissa before actually handing over the mic to her. I will give you some housekeeping points. Mellissa will complete her presentation first. And if any of the participants have any questions, they can actually raise their hand. You can see that on your screen below. When you raise the hand, you will be unmuted, and then you can ask your question and Mellissa will respond to that question. And another option you have is also you can start typing your questions also. If you feel a bit inconvenient to actually ask a question, you can even type questions which Mellissa will be able to access and choose to answer some of those questions. In fact, Mellissa wants this presentation to be quite interactive. So thank you, and over to Mellissa.
Great. Thank you, Naresh. It's great to be here. Namaste, namaskar. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. But really great to be here, and I hope everybody is staying safe and well. It's been an unprecedented time over the last 3 months for all of us. So, you know, I've been trying to work and manage 2 kids, but I'm sure all of you have you know, hopefully got through it and learned new things about yourselves and your spouses and your children. So thank you, Naresh, for such a lovely introduction. It's such a pleasure to work with you again. You're a wonderful man, and you know, you've always had such a strong learning orientation. You keep pushing yourself. So I think you're an inspiration to me as well. So I've learned a lot from you. So particularly around aligning stakeholders. Naresh is brilliant about that. As an Aussie, we tend to kind of act and think later, but you know, being in India for so long, it's a lot about alignment and, you know, getting people on board first. So I've learned a lot from you. So yeah, I think as Naresh said, I'm an honorary Indian, and I think it surprises everybody, but I think it's just such a wonderful country. The food, the culture, you know, really well settled here. So, and I think it'll be hard to live anywhere else, but great. So I understand that a lot of you are doing an 18-month distance diploma in training and development. And I've checked out a couple of your profiles on LinkedIn, and I can see a lot of you are quite experienced, and perhaps you're doing this to learn a bit more about learning and development. You know, well done on taking the plunge and doing this in addition to your full-time jobs. I think that's fantastic. So hopefully today, you know, I can share some of my own learning with you. I hope you find it useful. As Naresh said, you know, really happy to make this interactive, because I think if I just talk at you, you'll go to sleep. So I want you to kind of ask questions along the way as well. And we'll leave a lot of time for questions at the end as well. So the presentation should only take 20 minutes. So there's a lot of time for us to talk and clarify any doubts. So as Naresh said, I kind of went from a consulting background and suddenly found myself in IT services, which is very different, and kind of led this really interesting program where we recruited from Harvard, from London Business School, from Kellogg, also from the IIM, Ahmedabad, Bangalore and Kolkata, and kind of focused on their leadership development over an 18-month program, a bit like a rotational program where they had a stint in each critical function. And the intent was really to groom them for larger roles. And I did that for a few years, and it was really exciting. We had a really high retention rate. But I think the great thing about Wipro is it's so big, you can do a lot of different things. So I decided to dig a bit deeper into HR and take on more of a line HR role over the last 2 years. So, and what's interesting about my portfolio is I look after, I guess, the kind of the emerging change part of the business, which is a smaller part of the overall infrastructure business. So we have about 22,000 people, and I roughly look after a smaller subset of around 3,000 people. So it's not the whole thing, but I think what's exciting about it is you're kind of bringing in the real technical experts, the more experienced talent, and trying to kind of create solutions for the future for the organization. So just in terms of the business I'm going to focus on is the cloud business, which is really about helping organizations go from, I guess, a physical IT to managing their IT infrastructure on the cloud. Which frees up a lot of capital expenditure. You can pay per consumption, and it's a lot faster. You know, look at us on Zoom. You know, it is a cloud, you know, kind of conference facility that we would have never thought was possible, you know, a couple of decades ago. So, so that business contributes to about 2 billion in revenue, and the objective is really for that business to grow 3x. So it's an interesting kind of L&D or talent problem, because, you know, you kind of got to think about, God, how do I manage that? And we've also had a lot of attrition. So we're running at about 20% attrition, which in the IT services sector is really tracked very, very closely because, our business is people. So we make revenue of our technical expertise. So with attrition at 20%, what we've also realized is a lot of people are poaching our talent. And perhaps Wipro's brand isn't as kind of, maybe as strong as like an Accenture or these big consulting companies. But, I can tell you a lot of, AWS, Google Cloud, Deloitte are actively poaching from our cloud practice, which is again, really frustrating. How do you retain them? So I just wanted to kind of walk through to make it a bit more relevant in a case study format. But yeah, that's a bit about myself and just a bit of context. And again, I know a lot of you probably don't come from IT services and you perhaps may not have an interest, but I think it's useful because there's a big churn, there's a real focus on learning and development. So great. So let's just jump straight into it. Let's go to the first slide. So I'd love to get your thoughts on what is talent management. So in your chat box, if you could just, put, what do you think is this talent management? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you could, each of you just, there's no right or wrong answer, but, would love to get your brain, starting to work. So please do, pop in your comments. We'll have a look at the chat. Good. Okay. I can't see any chat questions. Govinda, I'm not able to see that.
Just click on the chat below. Then it pops up on the right side.
Okay. One second.
Besides the option of share screen, like you have a chat option.
Okay. I'm on a Mac, so.
Oh, okay.
I think there are no comments so far. Huh?
So they're putting the answers on the chat window.
Okay. Sorry, we'll go back. Govinda, would you just be able to read out? I'm not able to see those.
Yes.
Sorry, so sorry, guys.
Maybe I can allow like 2 or 3 persons to ask you directly. Say the answer directly if you want. Some says like maximizing, actually they're typing so fast, like once I start reading, it goes away. Planning human capital requirement of an organization, talent acquisition and retention. Some say starts from onboarding, a new joining goes to induction and engaging the employees with different activities and training. Career development. Keeping an eye on inventory of talent pool sessions and company anticipating. Talent management is retaining of organization talent. Managing diversity. Keep learning. Right people, right designation. These are some of the answers which came on chat.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you for helping. Great. Yeah, some really, really great responses. And yeah, I think a lot of you you've got it. I think the term is quite a lot of people get confused by it actually. A lot of people kind of confuse it with succession planning. Which, it absolutely includes succession planning. But in a way, I guess it's kind of a beautiful kind of framework that really just sums up all the important HR processes as well. So I kind of showed it previously, but just I've got a really, really lovely framework which has been developed by Burson and Associates, which I think has now been taken over by Deloitte. But essentially what you can see is it's really, this continuous approach to, talent from a talent strategy, from a performance management, from recruiting, succession planning, leadership development, and of course, learning and development as well. And the objective is really to help HR operate more efficiently so they're able to respond to business needs as well. So you can see the learning and development kind of cuts across that as well. And I guess it's just to kind of stop HR from just doing its own thing, and give a set of tools and experiences that, can help, get talent ready to meet the business strategy as well. And a lot of people look at it like a supply chain, where, you're kind of, acquiring goods, you're managing capital. So they've kind of used it for a similar talent management lens as well. So I think what's quite interesting is the natural link to learning and development is through succession planning, as well as performance management as well. So, succession planning, you're kind of looking at your bench strength, you're looking at, obviously your need for those critical roles, and where there's some gaps as well. Performance management should give you the training needs, but often there isn't maybe a closer link there as well. So just to use the example of my current business, so if we want to grow 3 times, what we've realized, we need to almost double our headcount. So when we first started to do that, we couldn't find anybody internally that had the skills, and that would take a couple of years. So we actively looked on the market and looked for, specific skills and then hired them. And then, of course, now with the downturn, so recruiting is kind of on hold for Q1 for us, like most organizations, because of COVID. So a lot of now the focus is really looking at how do we, through our Cloud Academy, reskill, top talent as well. So, so just, a kind of a little kind of overview about the framework. Yeah, so any questions on this particular framework? Anything you think is missing? Would love to have your commentary. If you could just type away in the chat box, what do you think of the model? Are you kind of seeing how, all these wonderful HR processes are kind of all interlinked, and they're meant to kind of, be continuous, I guess, and feed in from each other, as I talked about, this business strategy of achieving triple its revenue would mean we'd need to double our workforce. So initially, can we recruit, can we upskill? And then once we have them, how do we then make sure we manage them so they're able to upskill? We're also able to use some of these resources for critical roles and groom a few to kind of hold these critical positions. So Govinda, is there any commentary just on the chat box?
There is an important question from one of the past presidents and a mentor of the Diploma Programme, Dr. Sunil Abrol. Is manpower planning not part of talent management? He asked a question on chat.
Yeah, I think it's basically the first pillar. As I talked about talent strategy, we're aligning closely. If you look at the very, very first box, you've got the business strategy. Then you're actually looking at workforce planning as well. So as I said, in order to equal a triple of the revenue, I'm looking at doubling the workforce. Unfortunately, how it works in IT services, there isn't an active, planning of workforce. It tends to be more on a just-in-time model, because it's kind of reflecting on when we win a large deal, you do like a delivery assurance, and then you look at capability and how you're going to then deploy resources and deliver on the statement of work, your SOW that you've signed. So, so I think that the challenge of that in the IT sector is often fulfillment, or the time we take to hire people takes 60 to 90 days. And often the joining ratio is at about 60%. So that means that only 60% of people that we make offers to don't even join. So, you know, you're absolutely right. And, you know, I think the industry needs to change to be a lot more planned and strategic in how they, you know, plan for their year. But often it is a just-in-time model. I think the way the industry, and I think where TCS has done really, really well is they've focused a lot more on the junior employee base, the fresher base, and kind of cater hiring. So hiring mass thousands and thousands of engineering and putting them into technology towers and training them up so they don't have to rely on, you know, that external hiring. But it's very much there. You know, it's less used in the IT services industry, which tends to be more of a just-in-time hiring model when we can plan when a project is going to start and then, you know, onboard people for that. But then sometimes there's delays in terms of contract signing and such. But hopefully that answers your question.
Melissa, I have one question here. I'm Naresh here.
Yeah.
See, this is all talent strategy planning. Then you focus on your high potentials, the people whom you would not like to see them leaving. So how do you support this talent strategy and planning through a retention program? Because as you mentioned at the start of the program, 20% retention rate is quite high. In a manufacturing unit, it's quite high. In IT, I can understand. But how do you ensure that your top talents don't walk out of your front door?
Yeah.
You spend top dollar on this leadership development, and then you run the risk of losing these people. What exactly do you do to ensure their retention?
Yeah, and a great question as well, Naresh. So I think this is where the model is so wonderful, and I've used it so much coming into this HR role over the last couple of years. So it ties in beautifully from performance management. So what would happen? So Wipro, so we have a quarterly appraisal cycle, and you know, that ensures real-time feedback. Training needs are identified, development plans are created. But then at the end of it, every year we have an annual appraisal cycle, and then you have a rating, which there's a lot of, perhaps that's a separate lecture, but, and while, we don't have a bell curve, you naturally want to normalize. I think most managers, or most people think, I think it's 90% of people feel that they're top, in the top 10%. So, you need to help managers normalize. But the point is that process through performance management identifies the high potential or the top talent. So through that process, we have a 5 rating matrix. So you have your unsatisfactory, and often that leads to a termination. You have an MCE, which is a more contribution expected, and typically the employees put on a 3-month performance improvement plan where they're given that opportunity to be successful, and that would be a fortnightly kind of connect. Then you have your HVC, which is highly valued contribution, which is your majority, which is your 60% of your workforce. And then you have these 2 ratings, which is excellent contribution and outstanding contribution. So those 2 are classified as top talent. So what you would do is then you would invest disproportionately into those identified talents. So in terms of the annual increment cycle, they would be given double, your HVCs or your solid contributors. If we've also, then if you look at succession planning, those top talent are also playing critical roles. We would ring fence them. So if they are critical talent, we would invest in them. So, so that would be pretty important, as long as their role that they're playing is a critical role. But these people, they contribute 3x, compared to that average, solid contributor. But these are the ones that really do deliver exceptional results. So, the business absolutely needs to invest. And I think, also create a a career, path for them as well. So, and maybe just to kind of I think it's quite timely if it's okay if I just walk through a couple of examples of what we've done to kind of ring fence or kind of groom talent. Because I think it's not only about money. A lot of top talent, they're ambitious, they want to play bigger roles. So that's when these leadership development programs come into play, where there's active mentoring. There's also using external coaches to really, make sure that they're able to, play a bigger role. So Naresh, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you very much, Mellissa.
Yeah. Well, and we can come back to it too. I'll just go, just to the next slide, just to, so I've spoken a little bit about our cloud business, and I just wanted to talk about Trend Next and Catapult. So as I've kind of just talked about, we have a quarterly appraisal process, and then we have an annual appraisal process. So after the quarterly appraisal, what managers are meant to do is they're meant to work with the employee to create a development, a development plan, set learning goals. And typically we would follow the 70-20-10, learning philosophy, which I'm sure a lot of you have learned on this course. But it's just such a wonderful framework. And to recap, 70% is to make sure that it's on the job learning, where people can make, mistakes but they're in a real environment, so they truly learn. And then you've got the 20%, which is a social learning, which is about the mentoring and learning from experts. And then, the 10% is that very, very small kind of structured learning, where they're learning tools and frameworks and where they can implement in a project. So, so as I said, what's nice about this is if there's a lot of development areas, we could help them, govern that process, where they put employees on performance improvement plans. As I said earlier, if they are top talent, they'll obviously get more salary increase. They'll obviously be eligible for promotions, for retention bonus, ESOPs and such. So we have found, though, it is sometimes difficult to integrate performance management with learning and development. Sometimes what happens is it's a bit of a tick mark exercise. So the manager will create an action plan, but maybe not follow through, not really have the rigor. And then a year goes by and the development needs are still there as well, which is a problem because obviously, they're at risk of being redundant. The business is changing quite a lot because, cloud is in flux and there's so many changes in technology that you really have to stay at it in order to stay relevant. So, so that's sometimes when it doesn't kind of go well. And what we try to do is counsel, managers so, they're able to, follow through on that, and also for HR to play a greater role where they're governing those processes. But the big issue was how to create a pull factor. How do you get employees to own their development? And in Wipro, because it's such a huge organization, it's difficult to kind of push these things. There has to be that ownership. So if you think about pull factor, so what we tried to do in Trend Next is to give a lot more flexibility in terms of what specific skills our junior employees would like to learn. So I guess Trend Next is more of a technical competency training, and it's really kind of geared on those future digital and kind of cloud-based skills. So what's really nice about Trend Next is it's a learning portal, but you go in there and the employee can see what are the hot skills in the market. And like, it's like a big bubble that's, you know, the employee then knows, oh, that's a hot skill. And that actually creates a bit of a pull factor as well, because, you know, they want to make sure they have that skill. The other pull factor as part of Trend Next is they get to choose the skills of their choice. And it's also kind of flexible skill-based learning. We've also tied up with our providers as well, where once they complete the training, they'll be given a voucher to take the test, and then they get a free certification. And these certifications with IBM or Microsoft or Amazon, they're worth like $500, you know. So not only does the individual gain because they can have that on their CV, but also the organization gains, because then we can use those skills and put them on projects and complete those projects. So so as I said, as part of Trend Next, these junior employees have to have 6 new skills in 2 years. So they have 3 in 1 year and 3 in the next, and they flexibly can choose those. One of the skills has to be in their practice area. So let's say they're in cloud, so they might take, you know, an Amazon Web Services, or they might now look at Google Cloud Platform because that's the hot skill, and there'd be a big bubble around that as well. And at the junior level as well, in order to be eligible for that next progression cycle, they have to have completed those 6 skills over the 2 years, or 3 every year. One issue we did face with Trend Next is again, a lot of employees didn't make the threshold, they didn't complete the training in time, and a lot of it was, you know, the manager wasn't allowing them time to invest in their development. So again, we had to counsel employees, we had to run manager effectiveness programs. Some of them also said some of the courses on Trend Next weren't relevant for them. So then, you know, we had to, you know, again, refresh, add a lot more relevant skills there as well. But I think Trend Next has been a great, you know, program for upcoming employees, where we've been able to quickly identify their needs, and then also give them the flexibility how they want to learn, and try to de-link it as much as possible from promotion. But at the junior levels, have that as a bit of an entry criteria. Just because they complete it doesn't mean they'll be promoted, but it's some kind of incentive. So that's a little bit about Trend Next. The other you know, program I wanted to talk about, just in that integrated talent management process, was about Catapult, which you know, it's I guess a systematic skill enhancement and career growth program. So really looking at the career management phase of the integrated talent management. If you look at the cycle of attracting, developing, retaining, kind of that cycle. So, you know, how are you actively managing careers? So Catapult, I guess if you think about Catapult, you're kind of catapulting somebody to the next level. So over 1,000 employees have gone through this specially curated learning program. And this, they actually get to, you know, choose the technology tower that they'd like to specialize in. They then get allocated a mentor, they get unique lab experience. So to get cloud skills, you have to, you know, you have to work on the cloud. So, you know, we have a lot of tie-ups with Amazon and Microsoft, where they can go and play in a cloud environment, and that's all free. So they get that experience. So, you know, we've also tied up with Udemy, Coursera, so they can also access as the partner portals as well, like a Red Hat, which is kind of a DevOps, you know, kind of technology provider, and they can go into Red Hat and have access to all their products, everything, and learn and play, and again have a voucher and get certified in that as well. So you know, and what happens as well, they're given a job description. So these junior resources, they have a clear job description about what that next level role will be, what are the roles and responsibilities. And as soon as they you know, they finish the training, they pass the certification, they get catapulted into the next level. So that means they get more money, they get additional responsibility, and then it forces the next level to then do a larger role or then move out. So it's been really helpful to kind of rotate people as well. Because sometimes, people, and you'll all see this, I think, in your own organizations, managers hold on to talent too. They don't want to let them go. So because we're forcing people moving up, you're then forcing the others to be pushed up or move into different areas of the company. And so what went really wrong, as I said, the biggest issue is we've had 40% attrition. The market has come to know, are you Catapult trained? Yes, and they're interviewing and hiring these people. So again, it's crazy, to retain them. But so again, as Naresh said, we've had to ring fence some of those critical talent, but also know we are going to lose some, and therefore, have more people go through the Catapult program. So that's a little bit about those two programs. Was there any questions about, from a Trend Next or Catapult perspective that was a little unclear, or anybody wanted to ask some additional questions around that? You can see Balaji's raising a hand.
Maybe you can raise the hand. We'll unmute you. You can ask the question.
Yes, Balaji, you can unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, my question is, Catapult, I understand, is more of career development cycle or program, which is knitted in a fashion that it takes care of the whole cycle. And I'm not very clear with the Trend Next. Is it only with the technology side? Would you please explain on that?
Yeah, exactly. I think Trend Next is helping employees upskill in the latest technology. Because what happens when we hire them, they have 3 or 4 skills that they're experts on. And because things change so quickly, we need to deploy them. So it's in our interest as well as theirs to make sure that they're staying up to date, even though they're in a current project using those exact skills. So it's, I guess, giving them an incentive to make sure that they learn those 3 skills each year that are in the digital and emerging technology. So it could be around cloud. And also they're given the opportunity to learn about analytics. So it doesn't have to be, even though they're part of the infrastructure business, if they want to pick up a skill around big data, they can. So that's where we've had a lot more of a pull factor. We had a previous one where we kind of bundled skills, and it was a lot more push-based, and a lot of them weren't happy about that. They were forced to learn skills that they didn't want to. So yeah, is that helpful? So the first one's really about skill, and the second one is career management, giving that a clear kind of pathway, and then giving them that additional role.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Rashmi, please ask your question.
In response to the coronavirus pandemic, organizations will swiftly make certain workplace changes. One of them would be cutting the budgets. But before cutting the training budgets, what other development alternatives do you suggest?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a lot of organizations will do it because they need to survive. A lot of projects have been put on hold. So I think in survival, you'll absolutely see that. I think what we've tried to do is, because where we're lucky is we're a services organization, and we rely on our partners in terms of their products. So we try to stay, technology agnostic. But just for example, last week we had a program being run by IBM on their cloud platform, because most people think, when they think of cloud, they think of Amazon or Microsoft Azure. So what they did is for free, from 2 till 5 every day for the whole week. They had access to IBM SMEs, they had all the training equipment, and they had to do that for 5 days. And then at the end of it, if you'd attended, they would give goodies. So they got a lot of rewards, gift vouchers and things like that. And then also they got given vouchers to get certified as well. So we haven't seen a kind of a reduction from our partners in offering, you know, kind of resources that allow our, you know, employees to get base. So I think if you're heavily dependent on external faculty, you know, then absolutely that's going to be a challenge. But I think because Wipro has, you know, a huge competency development team, it has a talent transformational team. We also have built an integrated, you know, learning management system. I think where the challenge will be is because you will naturally see a reduction in real projects to get people's hands dirty. I think, you know, that's going to be obviously, you know, a frustration around that. But I think the advice would be tie up with partners where you don't have to pay for content. You know, use your experts in your organization. So if I was you, I would start launching mentoring programs, you know, lunch and learn sessions, because, you know, most people, because they're not traveling, you can book those sessions online. I mean, Zoom is fantastic. We use Microsoft Teams. So I think it's my advice would be to leverage technical or SME mentors internally, and leverage your partners where you don't have to pay for that content. And that's what I would do. But there's no substitute for a real role with real challenges. So I think hopefully we are certainly seeing an upswing, you know, particularly in the UK. The US is yet to rebound, but I think you know, things will come back. But if you're in the retail sector, obviously that is really, it's a tough sector to be in. So yeah, that would be my point. Yeah, hopefully that's clear.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. I'll just, you know, I'll just run through. You know, I love this slide because I just thought for each of you, as you're doing this amazing diploma, you know, I just wanted to also call out as well how much it's changed as well. And this is really, even in my own organization, you can really see, you know, this shift from a heavy classroom focus to, you know, doing learning online, which is exactly what's happened. I think at Wipro and like other organizations, they didn't really think you could learn remotely. You had to be in a classroom, lock and key for those 3 days in order for learning to happen. So I think this has really kind of changed a lot of people's perception about learning can happen at any time. I think what I've really liked is the shift away from return on investment to business impact, because it was always really hard to calculate the return on investment because there were so many variables. And you know, especially rather than the onus on HR to really being championed by senior leaders. And a big reason why our Catapult program was so successful is there was a lot of leadership intervention driving it, making sure that people were freeing up space for these young people to move into these bigger roles. You know, and that was such a huge difference. The only thing that I found is a lot of leaders still, you know, think that learning is all about attending a training program. So a lot of it is also to educate them and cultivate learning, a passion for learning and an interest on that. So that's, you know, just really how learning has changed, which I'm sure you've each kind of seen, you know, in your own course as well. I think I touched a little bit on that, you know, changing mindset that learning can happen anytime, other than just in a classroom. And yeah, and I think, you know, just to kind of summarize it, you know, I think learning and development just has such a critical role to play in talent management. You know, just to kind of, particularly in India, as I've talked about, there's such high turnover rates, you know, so that puts so much pressure on learning and development to make sure in order to sustain growth, you know, we have, you know, a ready-made workforce that, you know, with a bit of time and support, you know, they can be cascaded into these larger roles. And just to add as well, what we did as part of our, focus on reducing costs, because we're a very people-first organization. We don't want to, let people go. So we do have a lot of contractors. So the focus has been more to replace contractors with people that are on the bench. So what happens in IT services, there's always naturally about a 5% bench because a project comes to an end, maybe a week or two, this technical person will get back onto another project. So, but what we were seeing, even though we were training people up in TrendNext, they had, a level 2 certification on cloud, there was a bit of reluctance for the leaders, the accounts, to take them because they didn't have practical experience. And so they were preferring contractors. Now with COVID, what's happening is they're willing to give them a little bit more time, because of course, once you learn a new skill, you need a real environment to kind of practice. So we have seen an uptake on that, which is really great. But I think just to kind of call out, L&D's role is very much around, making sure that, you're focusing on reducing gaps when a new employee gets hired or they move into a new role. I think secondly, making sure that you're using data intelligence from performance management. I can tell you it's not integrated enough, but you've got so much data, particularly as most organizations are moving towards quarterly appraisals. So use that data as well, data intelligence. It's also about looking at people's aspirations as well. Like we tried to do within Catapult, we tried to look at which technology area did they want to move, and giving them a clear path in order to kind of reach there as well. And again, nothing longer than 2 years, because technology changes so much, and all of our industries are being so disrupted as well. And I think the final point is supporting the succession plan. So in Wipro, every year we do a talent review process. So we identify critical roles, we then look at potential successors. We probably need to do more to invest in those potential successors to get them ready, because often it'll be a 6-7 month time period. Suddenly that critical resource will leave. And so I think learning and development has such a critical role to play in terms of making sure that successor is ready. So I hope this was useful. I think that's kind of my main points, but I'd love to answer any additional questions, anything I've missed. Would love to hear from you. So, please do raise your hand, and Govinda will unmute your line, and would love to hear from you.
Yeah, we have Naval Day.
Good morning, ma'am.
Morning, Mel.
Just wanted to ask about, you had very lucidly explained the role of L&D and training. It's prima facie how the organizations are shaping up the internal staffs. So is the freelancing training vertical dying out, or what should they do in next 2, 3 or 5 years to make it future proof? Because nowadays it's all going on this technical platforms like internet, Zoom and Microsoft Teams, as you very suggested. And the very specific things, I mean, when it was a classroom sessions, the trainers were required. Now all those things are almost available on almost all platforms. How do you see the future of freelancing training people around the globe? Thank you, ma'am.
I mean, look, I think there will be need for experts. I think, if you are a freelance learning and development professional, you're a facilitator, I think it's really about, becoming even more specialist in what you do, because, I think you will still be invited for your expertise. I think it's then also collaborating with a lot of these online tools. I think it's, there's still, an appetite, for expert to come and, facilitate those programs as well. So I think, it just the mode, the medium has changed from you physically going to a location and being in a training room to actually you facilitating that session as well. So I think it's the same, you cultivating your relationships, because for a lot of small, medium enterprises, they rely heavily on external faculty. So Wipro relies less because we can afford to have an internal team, but they've just switched the way they, kind of package learning as well. I think it's kind of unrelated to your question, but I think it's a good one in terms of the gig economy. Does Wipro use freelancers? I absolutely, as I said, in this time, we're trying to use less freelance contract model because they're a lot more expensive, rather than, kind of letting people go. But I think what we've seen is there's a stronger shift on self-led learning. So where I'm seeing internal learning and development professionals, so if you're not a freelancer, your value is really curating learning plans. Like, how I said with Catapult, you are curating learning plans depending on people's interests, their career, and then you're saying, okay, so that next level, this is a job description. How do I make sure that I can package their learning plans so they're able to, get that next role and be catapulted. So I think in Wipro, we also have an internal crowdsourcing platform called Top Gear. And on top of doing all those programs as well, employees can also, complete projects, on the weekend, in the evening, and it's a challenge model. So basically, they get cash if they're first finished, or they get the solution first. So that's a bit of a top up to their salary as well. And also Wipro, not only do we benefit because we've got the project completed, but also we also give them practical experience where they can learn new skills as well. So just a couple of points that perhaps I didn't cover. Yeah.
Just one more thing to add, ma'am. So are you saying that in order to be staying in the game, nowadays we need to network more and create our niche programs addressing the MSME and mid segment corporates?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, honestly, I get so many emails, but it's just, we have an internal large L&D team. And obviously it's cheaper for us to do it internally than have external faculty, but we definitely use external faculty. Let's say we've really started to focus on the IND inclusion charter. So we've just, a couple of years ago, we launched the LGBTQ. So we had to, bring in experts on that charter to help then train the trainer sessions. So then we could bring about greater sensitization, in that particular skill. So I still think you need to do that. But also, you may then want to customize your programs depending on their needs. So you still would do what you've always done, rather than just saying, look, I've got 10 training programs. I would, if I was you, I'd build a stronger relationship to understand their needs, and then curate a program and then deliver it on a virtual platform. So that's what I would do. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am.
No problem.
Okay,
Great.
next we have
Any
Pradeep.
other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, Mellissa, can you just stop sharing a request so your video can pop out and would look better while you speak?
Okay, is that better?
Okay. No, you remove the slide.
Oh,
The
sorry,
slide
of
is-
course.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stop
I'll
sharing.
stop crying. I'll stop sharing. Okay, beautiful.
Pradeep, you can ask your question.
Hey, great. I can see the chat box now.
Okay. So we have Sanjeev. He can ask the question now. Sanjeev, are you there? Okay, let's move to next. Chandrasekhar. Chandrasekhar, are you there?
I think he's on mute.
Sir, how to implement e-succession planning? Mellissa, ma'am?
Yeah. So what typically happens is again, you're looking at the talent strategy, which is aligned to business strategy as well. Then what you would do, it's kind of top down. You'd identify what are the critical roles in the business that if somebody leaves in that role, there will be impact on the business. So firstly, you obviously look at the talent strategy, you look at what are those critical roles that will enable your strategy. And then, you would then look at what are the critical competency, behavioral attributes these people have. And then you look at likely successes that might be a perfect fit, or they might need some development. So typically for each role, you would have 3 to 4 successes. And then what you do, you then look at their unique strengths, their development areas, and their readiness level. So you'd look at, are they ready now? So if this person was given a bigger role and would need to replace that critical position, you'd immediately pop that person in. Some people, they might need another year, another 2 years, maybe they need this experience. So that's typically the exercise as well. And as I said, that's why learning and development is so critical, because then you would create a learning plan based, particularly for the people that would be likely successes, but in the medium or long term.
Thank you.
Sanjeev, are you there?
Yeah, Mellissa, good morning.
Hey, morning.
Yeah, Mellissa, my question is about how do you relate the culture of the organization to the overall talent strategy? I'm referring to, we have organizations like Tata's, and the perceptional difference in an organization culture. Let's talk about Tata's or versus Reliance. So does that have an impact on employees' psychology?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think culture is such an interesting one, because it underpins everything we do, and it's a little kind of, you can't really explain it. It's just how work gets done. But absolutely, culture impacts everything. I mean, what do they say? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, and I think it's an interesting question, because I think Wipro, we've really looked closely at that. Because if you look at all the ingredients, we're quite similar to TCS or Infosys, but we haven't really grown as much. So, the ingredients are the same, but when we, release the dish, it doesn't taste the same. So I think we're really, the next couple of years will be focusing on the cultural change. But absolutely, I think particularly around, people development and nurturing people, if you don't have a culture that invests and rewards people for taking time to mentor, you're not going to have a shift, a development. If you're not going to have a love of learning, or promote a learning orientation, then again, it's going to be difficult for you to implement this. But absolutely, it's a retention tool. If people are misaligned with culture, absolutely. I think people also join Wipro because 60% of all of our profits go back into the community through the Azim Premji Foundation. So you probably would have seen over, 2,000 crores is going back into the community just for COVID testing in underprivileged, impoverished parts of India. Yeah.
Yep.
I love your kids. Hopefully they've been keeping you busy during lockdown.
I'm sorry, my mobile, it's my daughter's and my son's photograph. I'm sorry, I couldn't change it.
No, it's perfect. No, it's perfect.
Yeah, they're keeping me going. Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
No, maybe we can take one last question, Gurvinder.
Yes, the last question.
We may take one last question.
This is the last question from Suruchi.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, ma'am. My question is regarding work from home and the learning strategies you have adopted for past 2 months, because we hear that work from home is here to stay. So what is it that Wipro did differently in past 2 months? Thank you.
Yeah.
Mellissa, I'll just pause you before you speak. So just for the information of all the participants, the person who asked the question, Dr. Suruchi Pandey, who is a professor at the Symbiosis Institute, is going to be our next speaker on 29th on a topic called the return on investment by actually using the Kirkpatrick model. So over to you, Mellissa. I thought I could take the opportunity to introduce Dr. Suruchi Pandey, who's posed the question to you.
Oh, fantastic.
Please, over to you. I'm sorry for having interrupted you.
No, not at all. No, how exciting. I think you've got some great speakers and topics lined up as well. Yeah, look, I think for most organizations, because it happened so quickly, I think it was a shock because we also didn't know where people were. So, you know, once you've kind of identified where you are as well, I think it's just quickly understanding the feasibility of working from home. Did they have the infrastructure? Did we need to provide the infrastructure as well? So, you know, we had to sign off on buying additional assets that cost over $4 million. So overnight, the COO had to sign that off. We then had to, you know, people that you know, didn't have laptops, but had to, you know, because infrastructure was considered a core service. So, you know, you have to continue, have the internet, have infrastructure continue to go. So I think, and then, you know, for those that weren't able to work from home as well, you know, they did have to apply leave. So we tried to enable in terms of giving broadband internet, giving dongles, giving physical infrastructure. We did have to have people in the office, in the physical office. But again, we, you know, in terms of sanitization, so all of our offices were up and running. But again, you know, social distancing, sanitization, you know, all support staff had to work from home. So I think it was a miraculous, you know, kind of effort to continue, you know, the business. So, you know, we didn't have too many incidences, business continued to run, but it was just, you have to quickly make snap decisions. But, you know, we've got some amazing stories of our engineers sitting, you know, with cows, you know, getting up incredibly early, sitting on the milk truck, going with their laptop, doing their work, finishing at 5, back on the milk truck, back to their villages. So, I mean, you should see some of this, you know, photos. It's incredible. But I think that's all we could have done. Yeah. But I think the lessons are just personally, just about maintaining boundaries as well. I think everybody I've spoken to are working 3 times as hard because, you know, you're at home, you're not going anywhere. So the weekends get blurred, early mornings, early evenings. So I've got 2 young kids. So that was something I just had to implement. So I think it's also a final focus on wellness, you know, to make sure people were checking in, they were engaged. So we were having location level connects, some webinars, making it quite interactive and fun. So yeah, that's just a quick couple of things that we did. But initially it was really tough, not knowing where people were, not knowing if they had internet. Also, we had a lot of students in hostels, and I'm not sure if you're aware, a lot of them were told they had to vacate. So even then we had to put them in hotels, we had to pay for that. So, you know, because the lockdown happened, as we know, in 3 to 4 hours. So people just got stuck so quickly. So I know there's been a lot of criticism. Could we have given a couple of days as in Singapore? But that's what happened. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Over to you, Mellissa.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, thank you, Mellissa. I think that was a wonderful session. You kept the participants completely engaged through sharing of your experiences. And as all good things must come to an end, I think unfortunately we'll have to close the session. And thank you once again.